Moving on to our third presentation this afternoon from Alicanto Minerals. Peter George is the Managing Director, and he's approaching the podium to my left here. By way of introduction, Alicanto is presenting at Rising Stars for the first time, so it's always a pleasure to have a new story to present to our investor group. The company has an extensive drilling program underway at its greater FALUN copper-gold project in Sweden's Bergslagen region. Whoa, that's a lot for late in the day. This is a Tier 1 mining jurisdiction which hosts some of several world-class mines owned by global majors and has a long history of high-grade production. Greater FALUN hosts known mineralisation and numerous exploration targets. The first holes, which I think were announced quite recently, intersected visible chalcopyrite copper, and drilling is currently ongoing. Alicanto has a market capitalisation of around $40 million. So to tell us more about the company and where it's headed, please welcome Peter George.
Great, thanks, Nick. So today I'm going to outline what I suspect will be a pretty new story for everybody here and online. And that's because Alicanto is just warming up. You know, this is really a ground floor investment opportunity. Market cap's only around the $40 million, as Nick mentioned, and our share price at the end of yesterday was around the 14 cents. There are really 5 things that I want everyone to take away from this presentation today. First one being, look, we've got the right team. Very strong backing, very strong team, and there'll be a few faces in there that you'll recognise when I bring up that slide in a minute. We're in a Tier 1 location in southern Sweden, you know, within the Bergslagen district. The Greater FALUN project and the FALUN mine itself had a historical high-grade production profile, 28 million tonnes at 4% copper, 4 grams per tonne gold, 35 grams of silver, 5% zinc and 2% lead. But this was mined over about 1,000 years. So, you know, it sort of puts things in perspective. A third point being that, you know, we've got 1,000 years of geology that we've turned on its head. You know, I'll talk a little bit about my geologist in a minute. We've got a brilliant fellow. We've also got a plethora of high priority targets, which, you know, we've developed significantly over the last 12 months from when we first started. And of course, our drilling is all underway. So just on the board and management, so you'll see a few familiar faces in there. Ray has already presented today. Obviously I've got Didier in there as well, Mike Naylor, Steve Parsons, who also happens to be my largest shareholder, is my corporate consultant and a massive help. Marcus Harden in here, who's been doing all the grunt work on the Guyana projects in the background and is now helping Ray out in Orteco. And myself there as a 25-year mining engineer and mineral economist and executive, and of course Chief Geologist Eric Lundström. So, in a nutshell, Alicanto, you know, we're working to establish a large copper and gold inventory in Sweden. You know, in mining terms, southern Sweden is very much like Western Australia. And I should know, I was born in Kalgoorlie, spent a lot of my time there. But, you know, and I'm also lucky enough to have spent 6-7 years working in Sweden. So I've had quite a rare career in that respect. I managed to operate a number of large mines over in that part of the world. Look, but Sweden itself it's globally recognised as a Tier 1 mining jurisdiction. Most of you probably wouldn't have realised that. But, you know, we've got 3 major districts up there within Sweden. Up in the north, you've got the big government-owned iron ore mines, as well as Boliden has a big 40 million tonne IOCG copper-gold project up there. You then have the Skellefteå district, which is predominantly dominated by Boliden. This is a 6,000 or 7,000 employee company based in Sweden, one of the largest in Europe, if not. And then in the southern part, you've got the Bergslagen district, which is where we're located, and you've got some, you know, ripper projects in there with the Garpenberg mine. You know, these guys have mined somewhere around the 40 million tonnes now at some pretty phenomenal grades. but they've also got 120 million tonnes in front of themselves, so about 30 years worth of production. The Zinc Gruven mine, who some of you might remember from the days, which was owned by North. And then of course the FALUN mine, which I've already mentioned with those really high grade numbers in there, which was closed in 1992. But not to mention, you know, for a tier 1 mining jurisdiction, you also need to have the infrastructure. So in Sweden, you know, like I said, probably my 2 favourite places in the world to work is Australia and Sweden, having spent so much time there. But probably the biggest difference where we are, native title's not a problem. We don't have to worry about that in the southern part of the country. My power, it's hydro and nuclear, so it's like 7 cents per kilowatt hour, so it's almost nothing compared to what we have to pay in Australia. Abundance of fresh water, which again costs me nothing, not like Western Australia where you've got to pay through the teeth to get your fresh water. But then on top of that, you've got your high-speed communications and roads. I've got rail and roads going straight past my project and deep water ports within 150 kilometres. Then not to mention we've also got a very educated workforce that's pro-mining in that part of the world. And just to prove to you that it's not all IKEA and meatballs over there in Sweden, we actually do mine. So that's the FALUN copper mine itself, as mentioned, closed in 1992. Those couple of white lines that I've got shown there, that's actually the limestone mineralised horizon, which I'll talk about a little bit, which heads off towards our properties and the historic Whitgruven or Sagittarius mine, as we call it, which was mined at an average of 38% zinc and 10% copper. So some very high grade. So I just want to talk a little bit about cracking the code. Now this is the 1,000 years of geology turned on its head. So, you know, really this whole concept of the Greater FALUN project came about by, you know, Eric, and I've mentioned him before. You know, and Eric's role in this is that he and I both started in Bulleiden on the same day, 1995. I was a graduate mining engineer. He started as a graduate geologist. He stayed on and became chief exploration geologist for the company and had 6 major discoveries in his own right for Bulleiden. And when I approached him a number of years ago to come and do this, he's jumped on it. So he's looking to do number 7, but all within the same area. I won't go into too much detail. I've actually put in there's a announcement that we put out yesterday, and I refer to an animation within that announcement. You know, I encourage everybody to go in and take a close look at that, and you can really see the genius behind the work that Eric has done, and you can understand how cool these opportunities are that are coming up for us. But in essence, what we've discovered is that we're not dealing with what was traditionally thought to be volcanogenic massive sulfides in the Greater FALUN project, but we now believe we're dealing with copper, gold and polymetallic skarn. And you know, if for the geologists, you guys will understand what I mean, but you know, in simplistic terms, when you're looking for VMS style deposits, you look that way. When you're looking for copper, gold or polymetallic skarn, you look that way. And that sort of goes a long way towards explaining why this opportunity is still sitting here. So our targets, I should probably look at my notes. So when we first started, back late last year, when we were still running the DD process, we sort of started with a couple of different projects. Our main focus was the Wolf Mountain area. And the reason for focusing on Wolf Mountain was mostly due to the 11.9% copper rock that we discovered at surface. You know, as we were walking through the bush, you know, we realised there were some old workings out there, and the Wolf Mountain area out there on the left-hand side, and the old workings going back probably 300 years. And you know, just like what you do in Western Australia, the old boys had been out there chasing high-grade veins, and as we, you know, and they'd mine these things until they petered out. So we went over, picked up a few rocks and banged a couple, and I'll show you a photo of one in a minute. 11.9% copper at surface, so just imagine what the stuff was that's what they'd been leaving behind. So we did an IP survey over the top of that area, and that led us on a path where we did some drilling in January, February this year. We're 1,000 metres into the Wolf Mountain project, and that's where we actually discovered that we were dealing with copper gold skarn. So it set us on a pretty fantastic, I guess, ride since that point in time. So what we did then, I sat down with Eric going back, well, nearly 9 months ago at this stage now, and what we said was, you know, we just have to make sure that we've got everything locked away so that we're happy with the land package that we have. So Eric increased the land package from 150 square kilometres to over 300 square kilometres that we have now. And since that point in time, we've now discovered a further 11 copper, gold and polymetallic skarns, all within a 15-kilometre radius. So quite amazing, just to have it all within that very small area. But on top of that, we've got 70 kilometres of limestone mineralised horizon, which makes it a hell of a lot easier for us to explore. So just zooming in a little bit there. So this talks about the drilling campaigns completed and pending. So Lusty Bull, and I'll show you a couple of slides in a minute with some pictures of the core. So Lusty Bull, we hit some phenomenal grades in there. You know, up to 9.5% copper, 16 grams per tonne gold, 285 of silver, 3.9 of lead, 8.2 of zinc, and all within the top 100 metres. So definitely a project that we're going to be coming back to. Wolf Mountain, as I've explained, so we did some drilling in there. Grades of up to 11.9% copper, 2.9 grams per tonne at surface, grades of up to 2.1 from drilling, 69 grams of silver, 1.3 of zinc, but more importantly, as I mentioned, the definition of a copper gold skarn, which has really taken us on another path. Green Mile, which is part of our most recent drilling program that we started going back into September. So we've hit 1 to 5% sulfides, including visual chalcopyrite mineralisation, assays pending on that, which I hope to get by the end of the year. Put out another announcement yesterday for our Headon project, where we've hit copper mineralisation there in chalcopyrite also, but probably a proof of concept there for us, given that we can now see that the mineralisation is, you know, it's pro-grade copper gold skarn. Really exciting for us. So here's just the pictures of the core from Lusty Bull. As I said, some phenomenal grades. You know, we drilled this at about this time last year. We didn't realise at the time, obviously the super high grades got us excited, but what we didn't realise at the time was that we're now dealing with copper gold skarn, polymetallic skarns in the area. So this is definitely an area that we're looking to come back to. Wolf Mountain, again, some of the core, as you can see, a lot of copper in there. That picture down there on the bottom left, that's the one, the 11.9% copper rock that we had. And the picture there on the right-hand side where you can actually see the mineralised veins which the old boys were chasing going back probably into about the 1700s. So we did a small IP survey underneath where we actually found that 11.9% copper rock, and that's what led us to our drilling campaign. And I'll talk in a minute about another slide on a current drilling campaign where we're going to move over to phase 2. So Green Mile, again, you can see that on the top right-hand side, there's a picture of the core. So that's really only about 2 weeks old. We put that announcement out a couple of weeks ago. A really exciting part of the world. We're only about 7 kilometres along strike from the FALUN deposit itself. And now we strongly believe that this is actually part of exactly the same structure that hosted the FALUN deposit. So, you know, this puts some serious length onto this thing. So where we've drilled now, we've drilled 3 kilometres apart and we've got copper mineralisation at both ends, seeing some significant widths in the alteration zones, and definitely something that we are looking to push forward on. We've actually got the EM guys out there at the moment doing downhole EM, so I'll hope to get some good news out of all of that soon. Headon, so this was another one of our projects within the program, so we put out an announcement on this one yesterday. As mentioned, you know, 2.85 metres of massive pyroxene pro-grade skarn. Apologies to the non-geologists, but that's a significant intersection for us because it's a real proof of concept. You know, we've seen the skarns at surface, but now that we're seeing them in the drill holes as well, we're starting to get quite excited. And the sulfides in that area too are getting quite high as well, 5 to 10% sulfides with visible chalcopyrite and pyrrhotite, but again, probably distal to the main part of the copper gold skarn. So we're now moving the drill rig about 400 metres to the west to test closer to where we believe the causative intrusion or the heat engine for this thing is, and which incidentally lines up quite nicely with magnetic anomalies and a residual gravity target as well. So just finishing off on Wolf Mountain, as I started before, so we did an initial only 300 square metre IP survey going back to late last year before the ice came in. We've just completed a 3 square kilometre IP survey over the same area, and I put this out in an announcement a couple of months ago. So we've now got 4 new targets of significant IP anomalies, and that we're going to be moving over to those as soon as we finish drilling over at Head, and I hope to get some good news out of those before the end of this program as well. So ongoing news flow, look, obviously it's drilling. A lot more field work going on. You know, Eric and his team, they visited over 2,000 outcrops and historical workings within this area. We've now got over 70 kilometres of mineralised limestone zone, which has barely had a drill hole poked into it. I've got a 28 million tonne deposit right next door, which is now gone, of course. Would have been nice if I still had it. I think the PAC partners valued it at about $1.5 billion if it was still here today. I think they've undercalled that by about half. So lots of news flow. So just to reiterate, the 5 things I wanted everyone to take away from the presentation. The right team with strong backing. I'm really pleased to have the guys that I've got involved. Having Eric in there, he's an absolute mad genius, fantastic to work with. And also the boys back here in Perth and Ray over in Sydney, of course. A tier 1 location with historical high-grade production. You don't get any better than FALUN. 1,000 years of geology being turned on its head. This is why the opportunity is still here. People haven't been looking in the right place. Now that we understand what's going on, we're peeling back the layers of the onion and starting to really understand what's going on. Plethora of high priority targets. As I said, look, we're probably producing targets quicker than what I can drill them just at the moment. But we're really starting to focus in now on where we want to be. We've got the phase 1 drilling programs out of the way on 3 or 4 of our areas now, and then starting to move into phase 2. We've got around about $3 million sitting in the bank at the moment, so it's quite healthy. The current drilling program is scheduled to go through to the end of December. That's only a $600,000 drilling program, so plenty of cash in the bank for a small company such as ourselves. With basically everything's going into drill holes. So, and there we are, and I think that's the area where we found that 11.9% copper rock. So, just to give a bit of context, and of course the disclaimer. So, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Pete. Before you go, a couple of questions. I'll combine them into one because they're kind of related. The first was how quickly do you think you could define a resource? And the second was, what scale of resource would you consider to be adequate to justify a development decision in that part of the world?
Look, it's early days to talk about resources, of course. We need to get in and define a few more of the targets that we're drilling at the moment. But, my aim is really to get that sort of 15 to 20 million tonne worth of inventory in the area. That just justifies me to go off and build my own plant. Now we're talking somewhere in the order of 2 to 3 million tonne per annum style, which is very similar to what Garpenberry has got, only 100 kilometres down the road. And talking to Eric, he's the genius on all these sorts of things. He's quite convinced that we've got more than enough in this district to build up an inventory.
Fantastic. Good answer. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Please thank Peter George.